I'm Toby. I really like gambling, and fantasy sports is actually one of the only legal forms of gambling that you can do online in the US. And this is my story of the 2016 NFL season. I started noticing these articles just appearing, on feeds and stuff like that, about how these sites were ripping off sports fans because there were too many sharks. And I thought to myself, well, maybe I'm a shark. This involves two things I know a lot about: gambling and algorithms, and one thing I know nothing about, which was sports. But I figured 2 out of 3 isn't bad, and maybe I should give this a shot. So I'm talking through how fantasy football works. You can see you come to these sites, and there are lots of competitions. There are different buy-ins, different prizes you can get. And then you can click through to one of the actual contests and see that, just come up a second. You can see that there are different payouts. Most notably is that 500 people can enter, but only 100 people win here. And some of the top prizes are actually quite high. You're only paying $27 and you could win over $1,000. And to actually set up the teams, you buy a bunch of real-life players. You have a budget, so you can't just pick all the best ones. And you get points based on how well they play in the Sunday games. So this is how you set up the teams. And this is everything I knew about football before I started. Matt Saracen and Moxon, they were the main guy, the ones they make the movies about. So there's a quarterback. And it turns out there are other players too. This is Antonio Brown. He's a wide receiver. This is the guy the quarterback throws to, and this will become important later. They can get you a lot of fantasy points as well. It also turns out there's an entire other team called the defense. And the defense plays when the quarterback's playing on the other team. So the quarterbacks never even play each other, which is, I guess, why the movies are always plotted around one quarterback and not so much a rivalry. Okay, so here's why this is difficult. When you construct a team, there are all these different choices, and basically there are 3 quadrillion possible teams once you figure out all the combinations of players you could put in. So that's far too many for a human to consider, and even far too many for a machine to consider. The strategy also is that you have to basically play really risky teams, because being just slightly above average doesn't get you any prizes in these tournament contests. They have different ones, but that's less fun, and I figured this would be the way to play. So what I figured out was I needed to enter many teams per week, figuring out the best players, what the scores were likely to be, and construct a team out of those, and then actually construct a portfolio of teams that have a chance of being right near the top. I did a bunch of modeling, but it turns out that if you just average the projected scores that the sports sites give you, those are actually a fairly good proxy for how well the players are going to do. But what's interesting is that even though this might be the average score that they get, the distributions of the scores are quite different. The quarterback is much more consistent than the wide receiver. So in order to have these high variance teams, these really risky teams, you want to think about the distributions that you're playing with. The other thing is that the players' scores correlate with each other. Because the quarterback passes to the wide receiver, they actually have a high correlations between their scores. Essentially, if the quarterback does well, the wide receiver tends to do well. So having 2 on the same team, these 2 players from the same real-life team helps increase your variance. So the idea would be to create a set of teams with really high variance who are going to score really well or really poorly, and that have low correlation with each other. And of course, you still want them to score well. And so the way I did this was I created a set of teams at random, and then sort of predict the outcomes of this portfolio based on probabilities of what they'll score given their distributions, given their correlations with each other. So you can see here that I can calculate the probability that one of my teams will score above 140, the probability that one will score above 160. 160 was a good sort of metric for being in that top green spot, and the correlations between them. And then we optimize by changing out the players, and maybe you can increase the expected values and the variance of each team while also decreasing the correlation. We just keep doing this randomly, and we can see the probabilities getting higher and higher. So here are my final results. For the 2015 season, Expectation is negative 10% because they take a cut. My return was 296%. But only 8 of my teams actually won. Yeah.